Hello, how you doing? Thanks for looking in. So today I'm going to talk about the Independent Prison Capacity Review. This is a report, an inspection and review, which was led by Dame Anne Owers, and it was published on the 5th of August 2025. Recently published, but has had very little mention or little discussion in the media at all about it. Perhaps a reflection of how low people are interested, media and society is interested in our criminal justice system. And I think it's a great shame. And this report, Independent Capacity Review, is very, very thorough and comes out with some quite firm recommendations. I do highly recommend that you have a look at this report for yourself. There's a lot in there, but I just want to go over a few headings. And the conclusions really is that the structures and decision making of have focused on managing the crisis really, and Dame Owers recommends that there needs to be a move from crisis management to more strategic and systematic improvements in the prison system, but within criminal justice in general. So, and I actually, and she underlines some of the causes of this situation and in her report, but she also recommends that the Chief Inspector of Probation and Third Sector should be involved in the design and as well as the delivery of community services for prisoners. And really, there should be more emphasis upon problem solving than blaming each other. And she recommends that the IOM model for probation needs to be reinvigorated, and that more support should be given to probation. And I would go further, actually. I think that the probation deserves looking at again. She recommends looking at a more of a multi-agency approach involving probation. And I would tend to agree with that, particularly regards risk. I actually think that some of the reforms that have been made by respective politicians over the years have been absolutely disastrous, and this report confirms this also. So let's talk about the prison crisis and the impact on prisons. I mean, what's happened is that caseloads went up considerably, and in fact, the prison population, due to politicians imposing lengthier prison sentences for offences in response to public demand probably, but in fact, people are being sentenced more and more to prison, and this hasn't been followed up with adequate resources and has caused chaos. And the projections, I don't know if you can see here, but the projections are just going to go up and up and up. And this is very, very concerning, very concerning. And do the media talk about it? No, but anyway. So the prison crisis, the offender management unit teams, cases loads went up and up and up. And this resulted in a vicious cycle of individual prisoners lost in the system, people not being properly prepared for release and coming back to prison. And a lot of these quick releases that they've been doing to try and ease the prison population have destroyed any sort of plans. And caused chaos for probation as well. Also, there have been very unwelcome moves from prison to prison, and people being moved around, and that has led them far away very often from the communities and their families to help people reintegrate. And it's caused problems for the prisoners and the prison service and probation, people being moved around. And I might add that a number of prisoners were moved to open prisons inappropriately, who shouldn't have been, really, in my view. And this has been really worrying. The other thing is the mismanagement of the prison service, in my view, has resulted in a drastic reduction of experienced prison officers leaving the service, possibly in disgust, really. Same happened in probation. And I really have grave doubts about how politicians, irrespective of what party you have managed the criminal justice system over the years. It's been diabolical. And this report, hasn't really covered a number of aspects, for example, but legal aid was cut. Can you imagine as well, you're an offender, you don't get support from legal aid, you get sent to a prison, you get shoved around, and then, you get supervised by a probation service on release who just can't cope, really, and are recalling people. Many prisons, so experienced staff with over 10 years in post, were about 61% in 2017, and only reduced down to only 25% in 2024. And that backs up what I'm saying. Many prisons have become severely overcrowded and understaffed. People have been locked up for too long. There's been a growth in drug misuse. Classrooms have been empty. There's been self-harm has multiplied 3 times. It's gone up threefold since 2014. Up to nearly 80,000 self-harming incidents in 2024, which is terrible, isn't it? Assaults have doubled over the same period. There's been an increase in staff assaults. Quite a lot of people with mental health issues get caught up in the criminal justice system and in prisons, not properly looked after. This is all a great worry, and it's so poor, isn't it? And the courts are struggling. There are huge delays at court. So this report details 2 main issues for the probation service. One, there have been great capacity issues within probation, if not greater than the prison service. But this has been very rarely spoken about in the media again, and the politicians. Yes, they're going to increase the number of staff, but they've been, also the report points out that there have been very significant and very disruptive structural changes, as well as changes to the role of probation officers. And the role and focus has changed completely. And this has impacted upon the role of probation service and the crisis that has evolved. So the structure and expectations of probation has been subject to considerable change and damaging disruption over the last 20 years. The Criminal Justice Act of 2003 caused a big impact and a shift in focus into more risk management and the like, and put probation officers in charge of the care of a person throughout people's sentences. And this relies on good communication and stability within the prison service, which hasn't been there. The Offender Rehabilitation Act, Mr. Grayling's transforming the role of probation, or whatever it's called, has caused massive disruption and hurt to the probation service. I remember well campaigning against these reforms really hard. Me and my colleagues campaigned really hard. We used to write into Question Time on the television, but lo and behold, our questions were hardly aired. Our views were hardly ever aired on Question Time. And week after week, we saw Mr. Farage, venting his spleen, talking about whatever his issues were, Mr. Farage. But our views were hardly ever represented in the media. And I think that's just so sad, So what happened was, under the Offender Rehabilitation Act, was the caseload of probation changed from supervising people on probation orders and community orders to massively supervising everybody coming out on licence. And the people coming out on licence purely resented it, and so did the probation service, to be honest, and it changed the mindset of the staff, changed completely from trying to nurture and help people and motivate them to go in a positive direction, to becoming enforcement type officers supervising these people, because they were worried they would be held accountable if some serious offence occurred. And the number of recalls went up massively. So Grayling's restructure, the report confirms, was very ill thought out, damaged, and a very expensive failure. And this needs to be again and again and again told to the public and the politicians. Indeed, it was so bad that the judiciary lost faith in probation's capacity and ability to manage community sentences. And many POs with lots of experience left. And there were fewer POs left to write reports. And possibly the quality of reports went down. There was huge staff shortages in probation, a vacancy of 41% in 24 in London. Essex had a 55% vacancy rate. How can you manage this increased workload and with less staff? Experienced staff left, and I think actually the way politicians have managed various public bodies such as schools and the probation service and the prison service has resulted in massive staff turnover and loss of very good and committed and dedicated staff with lots of experience. And this is a massive loss to probation, the teaching profession and prisons. And I blame the politicians for this. At one point, something like about 75% of experienced staff left, something like that. And, overall, they've been about a quarter short of staff probation. And those there have been less experienced and felt totally overwhelmed, which feeds into more staff turnover. There have been more recalls, poorer relationships on supervision, and the HMI inspectorate reports have been very poor, actually, on the whole, about probation. The union have suggested that, and I tend to agree with this, is that probation needs to go more upstream and focus more on people starting out on their criminal behaviour, and that services should be more localised and more integrated. Interestingly, the inspectors also inspected the youth justice system, and overall their reports are really good on the youth justice system. And the way they work consists mainly of a multi-agency and preventive and holistic approach, and which leads to good and outstanding reports from the inspectors. Very heartening. And I think that this prison crisis report, one of the recommendations is that perhaps this is the future direction of probation. But I would add that the number of people being reduced on supervised on licence needs to be put back, reformed. That those reforms made due to 2013 by Grayling should be completely dismissed and pulled back. And the main focus of probation needs to be this early stage, trying to rehabilitate offenders. And I would argue that the managing risk is not the sole responsibility of the probation service. It should be a multi-agency approach. Anyway, I do hope you found this interesting. Do have a look at the report for yourself. But shame on the media for not giving adequate reports and publicity about this important prison capacity review and the final report that was published on the 5th of August. Do have a look at it for yourself. Do write in with your comments and do let me know what you think. All the very best now and have a nice day.